Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's the return of the movie!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the return of the movie. I'm Ben.
I'm Kenny.
And I'm Matt.
All right, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. It really helps us out on the channel. And as always, from this point on, the podcast is coming out in audio format first. So if you want to get to this episode of the podcast or the next episode of the podcast quickly, make sure you stop by your local audio stream. It's not really local. It's on your computer.
Support
and
your
phone.
local Spotify app.
Support your local Apple Music. We want people to be using Apple Music. So yeah, go ahead and leave an Apple Music review. It's really helpful for us. And as always, be sure to come by the channel. That is youtube.com/Scope Productions, where we have all sorts of shows, including Too Fast, Too Movie, which is our more bite-sized review show hosted by Matt over here. And First Timers, which is
my show is actually called Full Stop.
Full Stop. Wait, what did I say?
You said Too Fast, Too Movie.
Too Fast, Too Movie. Well, oh shit, Too Fast, Too Movie's in the... I'm sorry, Too Fast, Too Movie is me. He's Full Stop, and Kenny over here edits our lovely reaction show, which is mostly just a shit post.
So if
you're welcome.
If you guys want to be traumatized by a movie, come and see my latest review.
Oh, god damn it, Matt.
And if you want to be, traumatized by a shit post, check out First Timers.
And we'll be having an interesting new First Timers coming up very soon. One that I'm sure is gonna make me look very bad.
Yeah. Well, I do it lovingly.
Okay, Matt, what movie are we watching today?
Batman Year 2. Not Batman Year 2, the comic graphic novel that wasn't written by Frank Miller. In Year 2, but Batman's second year of his career. As it turns out, he's not quite the world's greatest detective just yet. Halloween comes up and surprise, surprise, there's a murder! And a mafia boss is pissed. Now a new serial killer, and I mean serial as in serialized and not cereal as in Lucky Charms, on the loose. It's up to a mentally ill man who cosplays as a rodent to solve this mystery. Yep, in this classic Gotham tale, the Joker evokes mayhem. Harvey Dent loses his shit because what else is new? And the Dark Knight rises. Oh wait, that's...
Wink.
Wrong movie. This movie has much better death scenes than that. And I am not saying that next line, Ben. Nice fucking try. This is Batman: The Long Halloween.
Matt asked me to write a opening bit for him, very last minute. So
You tried to go fuck yourself, San Diego, me.
yeah, I did.
It didn't
It would have
work.
been amazing had you done it, but
I probably would have done it.
evidently you actually read ahead, so like I can't just rely on that happening.
I mean, I am an actor, so I have to get used to cold reading stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I just fucking bulldoze through everything. All right, Matt, who's our cast list for this set of two movies, actually? Because we're covering both Part 1 and Part 2.
It's actually a pretty big cast, but I'm just going to focus on the core of it. Jensen Ackles, Naya Rivera, Josh Duhamel, Troy Baker, and Billy Burke. Now, there's more, but those are the five main ones. It's a story that is written by... It was originally based off of a miniseries written by Jeff Loeb and illustrated by Tim Sale. Now, the two of them were longtime collaborators. They used to do a yearly Batman graphic novel, or a one-off issue every year, and those three have been since compiled. They did this for 3 or 4 years, and then these issues were all compiled into a graphic novel called Haunted Night. And because the reception to this was going so well, they were commissioned for a longer project, and that turned into the miniseries Batman: The Long Halloween. It was a 13-issue monthly series, so it went on for about a year, and then The Long Halloween did so well that they did another one, Dark Victory, which takes place right after. So it's between these two graphic novels, you see 2.5 years in the career of Batman.
Oh, jeez.
And the two of them would go on to collaborate in the Marvel Colors series, so Captain America White, Spider-Man Blue, etc.
Gray, yeah.
Daredevil Yellow. And Jeff Loeb would often return to Batman, not always with Tim Sale. So, for example, he came back and would write Hush later on. We'll talk about
that later.
Hush will be coming up very heavily in this.
The movie.
But yeah, The Long Halloween is one of my favorite graphic novels ever written. I really, really think it's so well done. It's so well presented, and it's so well shaded.
Yeah.
And when I found out that they were doing a 2-parter on this, I was so excited. And then I saw Hush.
Yeah.
So, I guess now I'm curious about what happens with Hush. Is that going to derail things too much to talk about that right now?
Well, we'll get to it later when we talk about the actual part 2.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
To make some comparisons and such.
Oh, so we're gonna.
Well, I guess for your sake, we'll try to leave out comic spoilers. Maybe?
It's fine. If I had enough time to read comics, I would not be running a company. That's where I'm at right now.
Okay, fair.
I really that's kind of one of my things with DC as a whole, as far as the animated movies and everything is concerned, is, and also just we've talked about comic book culture on this podcast before when we were covering Avengers. I don't think, to any returning listeners, it's no secret that I do not necessarily like the barrier to entry that a lot of the comic books have. And that's one of the, honestly, there was, I forget where this article came up, but right now, one of the biggest issues in American comic books is that American comic books are being completely slapped by manga sales.
Yeah.
And when you compare those two mediums, they're both graphic novels, they're both comic books. One of them likes to do consistent stories that have an end, and the other likes to recycle the same characters over and over again. Guess which one sells more?
Comic books?
Get out.
Well, the other thing is that both Marvel and DC has kind of moved on to a model of doing it this way with comics lately, where it's all part of one giant continuity, which is kind of impressive the way that they pull it off sometimes. Mm-hmm. But it just becomes so fucking unwieldy that it's hard.
It's intimidating. Yeah.
I grew up enjoying the X-Men, for example. So I was mostly Batman growing up.
Uh-huh.
I enjoyed the Spider-Man movies, never really checked out comics or shows or anything like that, but I did read a few X-Men comics, mainly the Chris Claremont stuff from the 80s. Mm-hmm. I tried going back to the X-Men 2 or 3 years ago, and right off the bat, there's just a laundry list of stuff you have to have read first to read issue 1 of a new series.
Yep.
So there's such a high barrier for entry, and there's I was in a comic book store after having stopped reading. I stopped reading Batman, so I'm current, right up until New 52 starts, basically. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I asked a guy at my comic book store, Atomic Comics on South Street in Philadelphia, great place.
Ooh,
also, Fat Jack's Comic Crypt on Sansom Street in Philadelphia, both wonderful local businesses. And I asked for a recommendation, a good starting point, and he's like, well, what do you want to know? And I'm like, well, I kind of just want to be updated on some of the canon stuff, just story. And I was given probably a dozen titles that I had to read at least 100 issues of all of them. Mm-hmm. And it's just hard. And so one of the things, so going back to stories like The Long Halloween, one of the appeals is that this was kind of just presented as a one-off self-contained miniseries. That's not really part of the current continuity, but it happens so far in the backstory of Harvey Dent, of Batman, of Gordon, all that, that you don't need any other context other than what you get. It's good to read year 1 and then maybe Man Who Laughs and then go right into Long Halloween, but that's really about it for this story.
I think one of the and this has always just been a staple of why comic book movies are hard, but at the same time sort of oversaturated. And
I mean, lately, yeah. I mean, the whole extended universe, or one continuity wasn't a thing until the MCU came along, and the MCU has now, in the medium of movies and TV, has become a comic book type itself.
And it's at the same point where if you try to bring someone that is new to this kind of stuff in, it becomes really difficult to find a starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I It's well, like, with the MCU, like you can watch a movie that's contained enough, but then now it's slowly getting to the point where, like, even with, like, the Disney Plus shows and, like, where, like, certain things happen, like, you can miss them and, like, still know what's going on in the movies, but there's, like, essential character beats, and I think we're sort of like, with certain companies with like DC are sort of like being pressured into, like, oh, we have to have our own. We have to have our own continuity, and that's what with the animated movies, the DC animated movies. That's where the New 52 era was going, which was surprising for me. Which was, I don't know how I felt about that. I mean, it felt very hollow, and I wasn't a fan of it. Honestly,
again, like, if you just because when we're talking about DC, we also have to remember that whenever we're talking about like any sort of video or TV film stuff, it's Warner Brothers. And if you were here 2 weeks ago, you know exactly how we feel about those guys. But
why? What are you guys talking about?
Did you not see Space Jam?
Okay, I have not, and I will not.
Good, that's the right answer.
Unless
unless
they subject me to a first timers, but anyway,
that movie's not even worth the first timers. It's just kind of boring.
Yeah, it's not worth the commentary. It's like you would just get bored halfway through.
Listen, like, I watched the trailer. That was enough. That was enough, and I watched an Easter egg video for the DC Easter eggs by Watchtower Database. Great channel, check them out. And that was my exposure to Space Jam.
So I think the big thing here with where we're going with all these DC movies and the whole continuity piece is that, again, as everyone knows, DC has tried to do this and gone up in flames. We had the whole Snyderverse thing happen, which is still one of the most fascinating things I think I've ever seen happen in television and film, period. But DC has always had this system where its animated films critically and with their audience are a lot better than any other live action.
Usually,
with
usually.
the exception of, like, Wonder Woman and the Snyder Cut at this point. So, like,
like, how far back are we going? Because they've been doing animated films since the 90s.
I'm talking about the new batch that's coming out. Because if we're putting the Dark Knight trilogy into here, obviously
post Nolan, then
post Nolan, yeah,
okay.
I'm talking about when Warner Brothers decided to start building a universe and put Zack Snyder at the helm. Because really, when you have to compare a lot of what happens with their animated films and even just what is happening within the media landscape as a whole, you cannot look at the Nolan stuff anymore. You have to look at what's happening with their attempt to compete with Marvel.
The funny thing is that the funny thing about, like, them trying to keep up with Marvel is that the Nolan stuff was such a weirdly timed series of projects for them because it was an enormous success in pretty much every imaginable way. But then he bowed out right as the MCU took off.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so they were left playing this, like, just eternal game of catch up. The other funny thing is that Nolan bowed out right around the time that the New 52 was getting kicked off as well. Although I think New 52 was what, 2011?
Yeah.
Okay, so 2011, and then the Dark Knight Rises was early 2012. So okay, so got it by a year or so, but it was close enough around the same time. So, like, the entire universe was getting reset, both comic and films, right around that time.
Yeah. The whole landscape that because I'm very new to the DC animated world. I've clearly had to keep my eye on the live action world for this podcast in the past, and we've covered plenty within we've covered plenty of what's happened with DC in the last year and a half-ish. But one of the more fascinating things to me is with this more animated side, watching this, I still couldn't help but feel that while it wasn't necessarily a barrier to entry, it felt like they were really relying on prior knowledge of all of the characters.
For Long Halloween?
For this movie in particular.
How do you mean by that?
So, Harvey Dent, in particular, I feel like he's the only character that's, like, actually truly explored that we kind of get into. Like, Batman is Batman. We only in part 2 get like some of his backstory in there, and at that it's very quick, and it's just, oh yeah, we've all known this before. We didn't show you this in the first movie because you already knew it.
I kind of appreciate this because I'm sick of Thomas and Martha just seeing them get shot.
Yeah, and it's kind of the whole reason why, like, in the new Spider-Man movies, they're just like, we're not doing Uncle Ben because you guys have seen Uncle Ben die at least twice already.
I mean, but yeah, that's a completely different rant for another time. I have my issues with that. But anyway.
Yeah, the point is that, like...
Instead, it's Uncle Tony.
I'm so mad.
We'll talk about that later.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Kenny over here is a very passionate superhero fan. And in particular, I know a very passionate Spider-Man fan.
Absolutely.
However, one of the pieces is just like with Catwoman, there was a lot. We were running off of a ton of assumptions about her. She just kind of existed within the universe already. And Joker, Calendar Man. That's actually his name.
Yep.
I thought that I was fucking it up because it's a stupid name for a character.
I mean, it's he's a serial killer, and
he's a step above Polka Dot Man. He's a step above Polka Dot Man, and I only know about Polka Dot Man from Suicide Squad.
The DC animated films are kind of geared towards a very specific audience. They're not really geared towards
not
wide mainstream audiences. They kind of have their own niche, and then they kind of just stick within it.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they have a lot of really good fan relations and fan interactions because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's almost like as grassroots as it can get for something like Warner Brothers, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
But it also kind of like when watching the New 52 films, they almost all just skip the first act.
Yeah.
So if you're watching a lot of these New 52 films, it's going off the assumption that you've seen literally everything in the continuity up before that point, and that you've already read some of the comics, and so you know these characters in and out, so they're just not going to bother with it a lot of the times. Now, sometimes some of the best animated films that DC has done, dating back to like Mask of the Phantasm, which actually did get a theatrical release.
Yeah, that doesn't count within the bundle of DC animated original movies, but yeah, it's...
Well, this is kind of a DC animated original movie, but it's also adapting a very famous arc, so it's like Under the Red Hood would be a good comparison, or The Dark Knight Returns, or Batman Year One. But the funny thing is, I wasn't expecting them to bake this into a continuity. I thought they were just going to adapt the graphic novel as it was, because that's what they typically have done in the past.
Yeah.
With the exception of The Death of Superman.
Yeah. Yeah, with The Long Halloween, I was half, expecting a tie-in with a universe of sorts.
Yeah.
The art style is very similar to Justice Society, World War II, and Superman, Man of Tomorrow. And yeah, I'm fine with it, and I think even if when the credits hit and you just leave or whatever, I think you're fine. But yeah, the movie I feel is contained enough where it's just okay, yeah, this is its own thing, but also it leaves a door open for an eventual Justice League movie, which was the after credits scene with Flash and Green Arrow showing up.
I didn't realize it.
I told you in the chat.
Yeah, he did. He told us in the chat. Yeah, it was in the chat.
Oh, I'm the worst. Oh,
told you in the chat.
That was like a week. Was that earlier this week or
that was
last week?
Last week.
That was last week.
That's why. That was
last week.
I'm sorry. That got buried in Discord notifications.
Yeah, I pinged you guys. Just hey guys, stay after the credits. It's just Alfred at the door with candy, expecting trick-or-treaters, and then
he just gets grumpy when they show up, and he's like, Bruce, this one's for you.
Yeah, Flash and Green Arrow show up, and just this one's for you.
Real.
Yeah.
Okay, I have so many questions about that, because traditionally I thought Batman was the one that would invoke any sort of team-ups.
Not always.
Not always.
Especially where Superman's concerned, it's usually Superman coming to Batman.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
Yeah, because Batman's not a team player. That's his thing. He's like, I work better if I'm alone. And
he also has contingencies for how to take down
every single Justice League member.
Justice League Tower of Babel, one of the more famous comic arcs for DC Universe in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah, and the animated movie Justice League Doom adapts that novel, and written by Dwayne McDuffie, which is brilliant.
I was having like okay, cool. This is like I was watching this. I was like, okay, this is nice and self-contained. I have some opinions about some things, but I'm going to jump in. And I didn't realize that they were taking it into a full continuity like that.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect so because the art style is very similar.
Yeah.
The I don't know, the Archer-like hard lines of the characters and stuff like that. Like, I mean, you mentioned that you felt like you needed prior knowledge.
Yeah, it did feel like that, and it kind of all harkened back to that sort of contrast between it's happening in the comic, like, and we're just talking about animation right now, but it really is an extension of that comic book problem that we were talking about of Eastern comic books versus manga, and like we can even argue the same thing for just Eastern and Western animation right now. So like it's really baffling to me. It's just like the difference of like the levels of success and like renown, because anime has become part of our culture. What's that fucking TikTok sound again? Oh god,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh man.
Well, I'd say that the original graphic novel kind of differs because that can be the first thing you read in that universe, and you really won't miss a beat because you know who Batman is, you know who Two-Face is, you know who the Joker is, and that's pretty much, and you know who Catwoman is, and that's really all you need to know going in. Like I'll save my piece on Catwoman for when we start talking about the actual contents of the story. But one thing I do want to say is that Catwoman is voiced by Naya Rivera here, and unfortunately, this was her last role before she died.
Yeah. And the first movie was dedicated to her memory.
Yeah. So, out of curiosity, because we were talking about this a little bit in the pre-tapings, it seems like they rely on a lot of the same voice talent for a lot of these films as well.
Yeah. Jensen Ackles voiced Jason Todd from Batman Under the Red Hood. The voice actor of Alfred is from the Batman animated series, which is a completely underrated show. I think it's
Batman the animated series.
The Batman,
Batman,
not Batman the animated series from the 90s. The Batman from 2004. So it's a lot of Batmans.
A lot of Batmans with variations of the in the title.
They're all like really well done.
Yeah, they're very. I don't think there's been a miss in terms of Batman animated TV shows, like Batman Brave and the Bold. Completely different tone, but it's fun. What was that other one? The 3D animated one. Beware the Batman. Beware the Batman.
I never saw that one.
Yeah, the art style is bizarre, but like it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Not my favorite, but pretty good. Yeah, and Troy Baker voicing the Joker again. He has voiced Joker. The first time he voiced Joker was Batman Arkham Origins. That was a video game, which was a prequel to Arkham Asylum City and whatnot. And
I feel like everyone that voices the Joker is just doing a Mark Hamill impression.
Not all of them. Like John DiMaggio and
John DiMaggio was just John DiMaggio.
Yeah, he was just John DiMaggio being the Joker. it was great. It was great.
The funny thing is, you can see like because he's just himself as the Joker, you can just see Bender doing a lot of that stuff. Like just smoking a cigar and then just beating the crap out of some kid with a crowbar.
I think they are kind of similar characters. They both have that chaotic energy to them.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Honestly, I feel like John DiMaggio is only allowed to play chaotic characters. Period.
Oh,
though.
Absolutely. He has he has the presence for it, definitely. But Troy Baker specifically, I say, relies heavily on the Mark Hamill cadence,
sort of,
just like, "Ooh, Batman, I'll get you," something like that.
Very performative. Oh man, I'm not gonna try and pull a Mark Hamill joke out of my ass right now.
I really don't know what that accent is. It's like mid-Atlantic, British. I don't know. Just Do you
Oh,
think-
yeah, Batman.
Elevated American a little bit.
I guess it's just like
Why did I put an oi in there?
Oi, Batman.
Oi, Batman!
Now you just sound like fucking Mad Hatter.
That's
yeah.
he was
That
in
was
part
John
two.
DiMaggio. That was John DiMaggio.
Wait, that
Really?
was
That was
him?
John
I thought that
DiMaggio.
sounded familiar.
That's why.
That was
I
John
like,
DiMaggio.
man, this is a really interesting character. Mad Hatter was like one of the weirdest, like,
Yeah.
That character gets some fucking creepy moments in the comics, but you don't see it here.
Yeah.
he
no.
was just like kind of a weird backdrop piece for like a random bit with him and
Scarecrow.
excuse me
yeah.
with him, Scarecrow, and Poison Ivy. It was a little extra.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't think DC wants to. The thing with Mad Hatter is that he goes after kids.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And he tries to
Ooh.
recreate Alice in Wonderland. So,
Alice in Wonderland, yeah.
so there's like,
Oh, that's like a horror.
yeah,
He's
so
trying to
he's
look-
one of the more twisted villains.
Yeah. And he tries to look for Alice. It's
Oh
creepy.
no!
It's creepy.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, Gotham's a dark place.
It's really interesting how like the voice acting industry is just so closed with all this stuff though, because like
yeah, like we've mentioned with John
it's
DiMaggio.
John DiMaggio, we just bring him up on happenstance, and he also just happens to be in part two. It's really a close knit circle, and it's like one of those things where like I wish I could. I know that it's a really close system. I know that a lot of the voice actors like either work out of the same studios or are within the same cities. It's like
Agencies
usually
and whatnot,
LA,
yeah.
New York, and Austin, Texas of all places.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. A lot more in LA now, I think.
Yeah, I think
I
think it's growing there. I know Funimation was, which is I feel like Funimation originally back when it was in Austin, that's when anime dubs were not really that big of a thing.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, you want to be doing the anime dubs. That's
yeah.
a good gig.
Yeah, and the voice acting circle is so enclosed. In fact, like someone like Troy Baker has voiced multiple Batman characters.
Yeah.
He has voiced Batman. He has from the Telltale games and also Lego Batman.
He did Lego Batman?
He did Lego
That was
Batman
him?
first. He did Lego Batman first. And then he played the Joker, of course. He played Two-Face in the Arkham games. And then the Lego games. And then he played Robin, both Jason Todd and Tim Drake, and maybe Dick Grayson at one point, but I'm not quite sure because he's just that saturated. At this point, you can just do a one-man show with them, really.
Part of me kind of wonders, like, if people keep recasting the same people, not just because they're talented, but because it's just less paperwork for them. Just you don't have to take a new person in your payroll system. You have all the information lined up. It's easy.
Yeah, and then also I think it's just like maybe like the director's just like, oh, I want him to sound like Troy Baker, or I want him to sound like Kevin Conroy.
Well, it's also kind of become a thing in the fan community as well, where they know the voices, and so it's like if Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill come back, because the two of them are actually a package deal. If one signs onto a project, the other typically will as well.
Really?
Usually.
Not always.
Not always.
But usually when one's involved, the other's not far behind.
Yeah.
And so those two are always a huge selling point to fans.
Yeah.
So there's kind of an element of fan engagement to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are from the animated series, and they're like, god tier.
They defined these two roles.
They're god tier, really.
There's a great documentary called I Know That Voice that John DiMaggio produced. It's all about voice acting and kind of like what the job is actually like and how small that community can be at times, but also some of the more ridiculous aspects of it, like James Arnold Taylor, who voices the thing he's most known for currently is voicing Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars and Rebels TV shows.
Yeah.
Yep.
He actually went farther back, and he was Obi-Wan in Tartakovsky's Clone Wars micro series as well. So he was one of the carryovers from that. He was talking about an early audition that he had. I think this was before he ever got involved with Star Wars, but the guy's probably about my height, which means he's like 5'6", 5'7"-ish. Maybe he might even be shorter than that, somewhere between 5'4" and 5'7", in that range. And he walks into the room, and the casting director's like fucking looking over him as he's doing a voice roll. And he's just kind of stunned, like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, why are you looking at my height? And so apparently the director, who was also in the room at the time, like, yelled at the casting director, hey, just close your eyes and listen to him.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That sounds...
Like, how stupid do you have to be?
That sounds like they brought in a casting director that, like, didn't realize that it was an animated film.
Or show or whatever.
Yeah. It's like...
But there's, like, some ridiculousness that goes on like that.
Jesus. I mean, and voice acting has always been one of the, like, most looked down on, like, forms of that art in the first place. It's only, like, until recently that people have started being like, oh, it's a legitimate role, but at the same time, we end up with so many celebrity voice castings in animated films still.
Yeah, it's
a problem.
It goes back to Aladdin. Believe it or not, I was talking to my friend a few days ago, where this conversation came in because Scarlett Johansson was suing Disney.
Yeah, in case you live under a rock.
Yeah. So what ties into that was Robin Williams also filed a lawsuit towards Disney because when he agreed to voice the genie, his contingent was that, okay, I will voice the genie, but you cannot use the genie in marketing material to promote this movie because I don't want the voice acting community to be shafted and bring in celebrities for voice acting. Disney went against that and marketed the movie through Robin Williams' voices anyway, and that's sort of the tipping point of why there's
so much celebrity casting
in animated movies and stuff like that, and voice actors.
Robin Williams was such a wholesome person, but hearing that he actually kind of saw that coming and wanted to take action against it.
Yeah,
which. To be fair to Robin Williams as well, he's a fantastic actor and he can handle doing actual voice acting given the given the role. But he that is my heart, my little heart for that man. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, he saw it coming, and Disney went, nope, we're gonna use your voice anyway to market our movie, and guess what we have now? So he predicted it correctly, and it's really tragic if you think about it. So
he tried, but
he tried, and that's why he sued Disney and just refused to, voice the genie for a while.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys about, because this was again, I'm the outsider on all this, so I'm learning all this for the first time.
Yeah. Okay.
The graphic novel.
Yes. So before that, what did you think?
Of this film. Okay.
Of the plot of it all.
It got pretty fucking messy towards the end.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. The idea that the killer spoil. You've seen this movie before. If you haven't, just fucking skip ahead.
Or read the graphic novel.
Well, apparently that might be different. So the idea that the whole thing with the holiday killer's identity, just going right there, because that's one of the points for me that just had me scratching my head a lot more, of having it be Harvey Dent's wife, which I believe is what they were trying to do, but there was a lot of everything was really in the subtext for a lot of it. Mm-hmm. I do not understand why she would have killed her fiance from college. That's that's my biggest thing, is just that immediately disqualifies you if that's the motive that you're explaining to Batman at that moment. And also why it appears like Batman just doesn't take her in or anything, and she just doesn't get it, and there's just no justice served.
For the record, I guess that is left ambiguous.
It's my issue with ambiguity with this kind of story, especially in the neo-noir setting, is that there were so many moments where where this movie made a really large point about justice mattering, and that's the entire thing with Two-Face. Mm-hmm. And the reason why Harvey Dent's even thematically Harvey Dent is even a district attorney in the first place.
Right.
So to leave it just ambiguous as to what Batman does is really problematic for me, because what he does in that moment will define him as a character. Of if he serves any justice of any kind or just lets her go. That's a big deal, because this movie is asking so many questions about what is justice through Harvey Dent's character. Just to leave it up like that is honestly a load of shit, and kind of I found it like actually kind of insulting. And I don't care if the comic book left it ambiguous from source material point. If you're going to make something thematic around the idea of doing that, to have a character be left with a decision and then just kind of fade to black when it's that big of a decision is asking a lot for me as the audience.
Okay.
And you have to remember, I'm not coming in with a bias on this.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm asking you. That's why I'm asking you, because we obviously have some biases here.
I saw Matt flinching when I said that, so
I think that might be one of the things that was lost in adaptation a little bit, because that scene, Batman's not actually in the room. In that the scene's
Batman's
equivalent.
not in the room.
It's just she gets away with it at the end. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Yeah.
She's burning the evidence, and it's kind of like this internal monologue where you get the motivations, and you get some of the lines that you get in that scene. She's just thinking them to herself as opposed to confessing to Batman.
Yeah.
And the last thing you see is like this close up on her, and it says, "I believe in Harvey Dent," and then it just goes to black. And so the Alberto Falcone motivation isn't there in the graphic novel, and so it's a very, very different setup in the book.
yeah.
Yeah. So in the book, Alberto doesn't die. It was a fake out, and towards which issue was it? Second to last, I think.
Second or third to last, I can't remember.
I can't remember. But when they were escorting Maroni, like in part 2, the person that attacks wasn't Two-Face. It was Alberto.
Interesting.
And Alberto takes credit for the holiday killings.
Oh, to protect.
Well, no. Alberto and Gilda didn't have a thing in the comics. So this is why, that's where the graphic novel lost it for me a little. The
graphic novel or the movie?
Graphic novel. I still love the story. I still love the story. I really do.
Yeah.
I guess I'm taking it as Alberto wants to be somebody, and that he took credit for the killings to just
be somebody.
Just to be somebody, to basically a fuck you to his dad.
Yeah.
And just now I'm bigger than all of you.
Yeah.
Gotham has changed. They don't need people like you anymore. They want someone like Holiday, and that's me.
Yeah.
And that's what Alberto did in the comics. He didn't die. It was unclear if where it gets confusing was so Gilda is the Holiday killer, but when did Alberto step in? When did he, or is it just
did he just start doing
it's
copycatting?
Also implied that Dent did do at least one of the killings.
Yes.
So you don't know who did what and when.
So
that's the confusing factor about it, and I do like how they streamlined it a little more in the movie, because that's one of the things that threw me off. If I were to talk about this the story, the comic book story to a friend who doesn't know anything, I'm just wait, so who's the killer then? I don't know.
Well,
so
I can first of all, that's really frustrating that they would make the ending like that and put Batman's character into question.
There's a lot of ambiguity wherever you go.
Yeah, but it sounds like the ambiguity in the comic book was intentionally confusing, though.
Oh, yeah.
And intentionally disorienting, where here there is supposed to be a definite answer to all the questions.
Yeah.
And it gives you what's supposed to be a definite answer at the end, but then there's shit like motives not matching up with Alberto's death, and I believe Harvey Dent had an alibi for that, if I'm remembering correctly, because the only thing that I could imagine is maybe Harvey Dent took over for her. That's the only thing that makes sense for that. But
I don't know.
Also, I don't think that there was any evidence of Harvey Dent discovering that Alberto and his wife had a relationship.
No, I don't think that was important to Harvey. Because like, okay, like in the comics, Gilda loves Harvey that much, and she's doing all that for him, basically. Correct me if I'm wrong. And in the movie, it's similar to that, where like, she cares about
him, but
she cares about him. Like she slowly grew to love him. She said, but not all of him, I guess. And it's just added motivation, with the Falcone that she was with Alberto, and what I took away from her killing Alberto is just, this, like, she loved him at the time, but like this family ruined her. Like they took everything from her, and it just emotionally damaged her, where she's like, okay, so yeah, this family needs to go, like, for Harvey and for me.
So I guess my other thing here is, it seemed like this movie was implying that she was trying to really edge him on to the psychotic break that would lead to Two-Face, which I find that a little problematic, for the same way that I would find the movie Split problematic. Because it is so, with as far as adapting Two-Face is concerned, and this kind of goes on to any sort of adaptations of mental illness, you have to be really careful. And I think one of the only movies that I've seen that kind of does it right. So basically, one of the big no-nos when taking something that's supposed to be like a psychotic break and then applying it to a character, especially an antagonist, is it shouldn't be diagnosable. Where in this one, it was very clearly trying to display a split personality disorder or multiple personality disorder.
Yep.
Which is one of the biggest issues with the movie Split, for people that do not know M. Night Shyamalan. And again, these things usually generate a lot of issues for peoples within those communities that are trying to just exist without being portrayed as a villain.
Right.
So Two-Face has kind of always fallen into an issue with this. And I feel like one of the only movies that I've seen that actually does this well is probably The Dark Knight.
Well, The Dark Knight doesn't portray
him as split personality.
Like, it just portrayed him as he's someone who has a very, very violent dark side to him, and it just kind of gets...
Well, he snaps.
Loose. Yeah.
He loses everything. It's much more of a... In that sort of adaptation, it's much more of a clean reason for this person to do it, other than, oh, they were just crazy the entire time. Which is kind of what this movie does. Because really, it kind of comes out of nowhere that his personality is starting to shift. Because we don't really get a ton of leeway into that with in the first film either. It's only in the second film that we start getting
I mean, there's like,
a little voice in his head.
The voices were new, but like there's bits of setup for Harvey in the first movie where when Batman and Harvey were in that room full of cash, and it's just like, if we were two different people, like the thought of like, flipping is there, and it's just sort of like, Harvey has a struggle with his dark side, and that's what the first movie was setting up, and just like, like I want to do good, but how far do I have to go in order to defeat an evil such as Falcone? And
Batman like enabling him with that coin.
Yeah. But it's a two-headed coin, where it's just like, the game is rigged, so might as well, do some rigging for us, basically. Two-Face's thing is that, like, there's a duality to him where he doesn't leave, he doesn't make the judgment, he lets chance. And that's where his obsession with duos, 50-50, and that's the overall theme between these two movies, and that's why I'm not usually a fan of two parts, but like I think that's kind of funny too, just
to do a
two-parter, and the theme of there are two ways of doing things, and like if you look back, that's consistent throughout the theme of the film, and that's what I really enjoy. Matt, I hear you have some thoughts.
So I don't know. I think with Two-Face, the mental illness stuff in the second part like was a little bit sudden.
It was really hand-fisted.
But the thing is, I don't even think you had to go there, because the first one, it shows him getting into fights with people and like going way overboard with it, and he gets goaded into finding himself in like essentially being set up as the holiday killer.
Yep.
In this one, because he loses his temper. So it's like you didn't even have to go there. You could have just shown his violent side becoming more and more unhinged, and it would have been just as fine. That said, I think the shifts that they made with Harvey's character, I think it works overall for the most part. And like the climax, where it's a fairly different climax in this one, but where he's flipping whether or not he's going to kill the Roman, I thought it worked. There's a couple of things I do kind of take issue with this as far as the adaptation goes.
Please.
And there's two here now that I've seen both parts. The first is that this is kind of the thematically, The Long Halloween is about the decline of Gotham from a city with normal problems and normal crime and normal corruption into something that is the rogues gallery.
Yeah.
Something that is completely uncontrollable. The genie is out of the bottle. Pandora's box has been opened. And so part of the horror of this story is that Batman thinks that there is... It's a lot like The Dark Knight, where... because The Dark Knight's primary inspiration was this story.
Yep.
Just even go back to the pile of burning cash just for like symbology that they ripped off.
Yep.
Borrowed.
It's an adaptation.
Homage.
They're allowed to do that.
I didn't mean that derisively. But it's like, and so thematically, that's kind of why the entire Rogues Gallery gets explored in the miniseries, is introducing them and then having them all break loose at the same time.
Interesting.
And having all of the mobsters, or most of them,
Die.
killed, and some of the more established families, and they have their old ways of doing things, and they all get killed off because they can't let go of those old ways. And Batman, for his part, completely underestimates what he's getting himself into and the commitment that being Batman will take on him. And so there's like the psychological toll that this all takes on Bruce Wayne just gets heavier and heavier between this and into Dark Victory. And I thought that aspect of it was missing from this story, because like one of the big tragedies of The Long Halloween is that Bruce Wayne is still very, very new to being Batman. He doesn't realize how much of a detective he has to be. He just thought he would get to beat up and
I thought this was a hobby.
Yeah. But he eventually starts closing himself off to everybody around him, to the point where Alfred is the only one he'll ever talk to.
Yep.
And so, like, with Harvey Dent, he is such good friends with Harvey Dent as Batman that he is almost ready to reveal his identity to Dent right before Dent snaps.
Yeah.
And so I wish that we had a moment like that where where just that heartbreak sets in.
Yeah.
And so in Dark Victory, there's a lot of pain that Batman has because of what he perceives as his failure. And one of the interesting things, I'm going to spoil Dark Victory here a little bit because this does it too. So
yeah, I read it. It's okay. Yeah.
Dark Victory is the sequel to this. There's another killer. There's another mystery. I won't get into the details, but yeah. And as they're going through it, Catwoman and Batman's relationship is so strained, and Selina and Bruce's relationship is so strained that Selina eventually just says, you know what, I've had enough, fuck it, I'm out. And she leaves the country. And then from that moment on, you never see Bruce Wayne out of costume. And so thematically, there's kind of like him becoming more and more psychologically addicted to being Batman as this goes on.
Yeah.
And it starts here and it goes into Dark Victory, but it's like that aspect of it isn't really covered here. And I don't know if they wanted to do that arc, but it's a key part of this story, in my opinion. And so the Catwoman relationship kind of like surprised me. Selina and Bruce knowing who each other are completely changes the dynamic, because in the book, part of the tension is nobody knows who Bruce is, and he's trying to figure out who he can trust. And as a result, he just refuses to open up to people. And so he's like blowing Selina off to go do Batman things. But, you know, she doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And he knows she's Catwoman, but not vice versa. Here, they know who each other are, so them getting pissed at each other for blowing each other off, well, it's like, well, you kind of... This kind of comes with the territory. I already knew that. But the other thing is that Selena is has a lot more of her own agenda in the original book. Like, because this one shows that she's the estranged, illegitimate daughter of the Roman. And you don't find that out until the very end of Dark Victory.
Yep.
And so you don't know what her agenda is the entire time. So, like, going into, like, the noirish, both she and Gilda are kind of like the femme fatale archetype. But they both have, like, their own agencies and their own agendas that are completely beyond the scope of our knowledge. And there's... Loeb and Sale actually did a comic arc called When in Rome, starring Catwoman, that kind of sets right around the same time as Dark Victory. But I don't know. I just felt like that the relationship was a little bit contrived, especially in part one, some of the issues that they were having because of the lack of the tension of, well, do they know who each other? Who knows what, and how much tension is that introducing?
Right. I will say, I understand from an adaptation standpoint to just keep their fucking plot line simple.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense to just have them be like, they're a couple, they know exactly who each other are.
Yeah.
They're like in canon gonna get fucking married later anyway.
Well, I think in the current comic timeline they are married.
Yeah. So like there is a lot of establishment for like at least for these two characters that the audience is going to know that they're eventually going to be an item anyway. So for the sake of this adaptation, might as well just make their relationship simple.
Yeah.
For me personally, I wasn't as bothered because, I mean, like, there's certain contrivances where it's just like, okay, I guess. But what I do like how because I know right from the get-go, I was like, we're not going to get Dark Victory. It's fine. Whatever.
I want a Dark Victory.
I know, but...
I want Dark Victory, god damn it.
Maybe in another continuity. Who knows? But yeah, reason why I don't have issue with, like, with them being a couple at the end. I am personally kind of tired of the broody, depressed Batman who just lives in his cave and just broods and just like, I fight for justice. I'm in this mission alone and me alone. And it's like, it's cool. Yeah, it's there's an appeal to it, absolutely. But I don't know, like, with the ending, like, with Selena by his side, just like seeing this kid coming up for like a trick-or-treating, I just had a smile on my face because I'm just like,
I liked it.
I'm just like, yes, like, it's cool to see, Batman broody and whatever, but people forget that he's also human, and he's like,
we don't want Bruce Wayne being the emotionally unstable man.
Yeah, I prefer it that way. Like, even though we're not gonna get Dark Victory, it's fine, it's okay. I just
Matt,
I'm sorry. I like it. I like it because it shows that my favorite adaptations of Bruce Wayne is when he's like, he's a guy, he's a person, like, and I'm tired of the ex machina. Oh yeah, he can do anything, and also he does it alone because he's Batman, and he's obsessed with being he's obsessed with the mission. And that theme's sort of like missing in this adaptation, and it's
I also
think the whole point of it. Yeah,
I also think that that's just kind of like overplayed.
Part
of his character, like, and going back to the Catwoman Batman relationship, she doesn't find out who he is until Hush.
Yeah.
And that was a huge moment in comics when it happened.
Yeah. But since we did Hush already,
and I will give Hush this. It was one of the best scenes in that was when they translated that part.
Yeah.
The rest of it, though,
no.
Yeah. But and so like since like year one, basically the entire Batman thing got rebooted. Batwoman and Catwoman have been doing the fucking will they won't they thing for like 40 years now,
pretty much. And
so it's just old at this point. And there was a pretty big like rug pull moment with the Tim King rebirth stuff that like the first wedding
arc
that it was just some of the biggest BS that I've read in a comic in a long time.
Yeah.
I'll just like, I won't get into it, but it's like they were so slavishly devoted to the status quo to where it's like, no, he can't be happy, he can't get married, that it was finally a breakthrough when Lois Lane and Clark Kent got married.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, what I'm looking for is I want my characters to grow and, you know, just let him be happy. He can still do his thing and just...
So do you think in this new continuity we're finally going to get some of that?
Maybe. I mean, what I loved about Superman Man of Tomorrow, which if you guys haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it. It goes back to the roots of what these characters mean.
Yeah.
And I won't get into spoilers, but the climax of Man of Tomorrow is not a fight. It's him inspiring people, and that's
really,
yeah, I won't go too much into it. See it for yourself.
Okay.
I'd say it's worth it, and that's what I missed from my superhero stuff, and I think that's sort of where we're going into, like, you know, letting our characters grow. I like what I love about, you know, this Bruce Wayne is that, like, he's like, you know, a badass and all, but he's also human. Like in the first part of the movie, where it's just like, oh god, like I thought this was just about cleaning up the streets. I didn't know I was going to be a detective. Like, that wasn't an actual dialogue in the graphic novel. I don't think so. But I really liked that because it's just like, yeah, he's just a guy.
Yeah, you signed up for this, buddy.
He's just a guy, and he's early in his career, and he made mistakes, and he's just like, oh, okay, you don't have the information I need. I'm gonna go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And this movie is about him learning, and yeah, he'll become, you know, the badass Batman we know, but just allowing him to, you know, be human and, like, you know, think about his mission. Like, you know, am I doing this to honor my family or to redeem them? And just bits like that is what I love.
Yeah.
And just making our characters more human and less godlike.
Well,
you know,
we've talked about this with DC before. DC has the biggest issue in the fact that they want their heroes to be more godlike than people, which, again, that's the whole Marvel versus DC thing, is gods trying to figure out how to be human versus humans trying to figure out how to be God.
Yeah.
So DC kind of like is like, oh, we tell those stories, but it's the comic book issue of status quo, and I really think that's the reason why Western comics, we all know the symbols of those superheroes, but ultimately
we don't know them as characters.
They're caricatures.
Yeah.
They'll never be fully fleshed out, because in reality there's going to be 20 different versions of all these people, and they're all going to kind of live on the same status quo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, as much as, you know, I'd love to say, oh yeah, Batman's a badass and he can do literally anything. He's the new Chuck Norris. It's fine. But but I want my characters to have a human edge to it. Like, he's, at the end of the day, he still needs to eat. He has needs. Like, yeah, he can go like, oh yeah, I'm dedicated to the mission, but like, what will that do to him? Really?
Well, I also think that part of that, and why I'm not like super bothered. I'm not like super bothered by some of that stuff, especially in light of the fact that they're not doing Dark Victory, because a huge part of Bruce Wayne's arc in Dark Victory was him learning how to cope with the psychological side of being Batman and having a healthier outlook towards the end. I'll go into Dark Victory a little bit. A huge part of the story is he takes in Dick Grayson, so it's Dick Grayson's origin story as well, and how he's kind of learning to teach and get along with others and build a family for himself. And so Selena also kind of plays the Dick Grayson role a little bit emotionally for him.
I'm sorry.
Shut up.
No, it's...
Fuck up. The point I'm making is that without doing Dark Victory, you kind of have to have that here as well, I guess. And so it's not like a demerit. It just, like, in terms of adaptation, it surprised me. But again, even though I like Jeff Loeb's work, I thought that the way that he left that relationship in Hush was contrived as hell. Just because, again, just the, like, status quo is God.
I mean, like, yeah, we have a new continuity, and I'm sure there'll be sequels. I don't know if they'll be adapting more stories.
Well, I don't know, because they left Sophia's fate pretty ambiguous, so they could do something with Dark Victory. We haven't seen Dick Grayson. We haven't seen
yeah.
But then again, if they're just resetting what 52 was, Dick Grayson's already Nightwing. So
yeah,
who knows?
And out of curiosity, if Sophie's left up, if the real question is that if she comes back to bite anything, if they do a further adaptation, again, that's going to leave further implications on Batman's character for this continuity.
This arc, both in this movie and because it's still early on in Batman's career in this as well.
Yeah,
this is the first time Batman's had to deal with some of this stuff.
Yeah,
so he doesn't know how to handle himself nearly as well as he would later down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what the new continuity brings. So with that, though, I think it's time for verdicts.
Okay.
So we'll keep this one quick, but Kenny, tell me how you're feeling first.
I really enjoyed these two movies because when I come at direct comic book adaptations, whether it be animated, live action, whatever, I sort of judge it as okay, I don't judge it for comic accuracy. I sort of judge it how I feel about these characters and do they represent the characters that I love.
Yep.
And I think it does well enough as an adaptation, and I do enjoy. I enjoyed myself thoroughly, and just seeing the characters I love, just do their thing, and through such an iconic story. There are missteps here and there, but this is the first animated Batman movie I've liked in a long time.
Really?
Since The Dark Knight Returns, parts 1 and 2.
Okay.
So it has my thumbs up for it. I'd say for this is a good, at least good entryway for people who aren't familiar with the graphic novel, or just Batman maybe. I have a friend who's just doesn't read comics at all, and I watched it with them, and they enjoyed it. They enjoyed it, and they were like, okay, I'm gonna go read the comic now. So if anything, this movie has that going for it.
Yeah.
I personally enjoyed it. I really liked it. It's classic Batman. So
nice. Yeah. All right, Matt.
Okay, so I have kind of been the negative one out of the three. I'm still going to give this a recommend. Don't get me wrong. This is very well executed. This is very well done. I was looking at it through the lens of someone who read The Long Halloween, and The Long Halloween for me is one of my favorite comics ever. It's one of the first Batman comics I read. It's one of the most important Batman comics, right on the level of The Killing Joke, almost, or Year One or something like that, where it's it kind of defined that, and a handful of others defined what we know Batman to be, and Two-Face and a slew of others. And so I don't think the one-to-one translation was as clean as probably it should have been. And just from that standpoint alone, I wasn't the biggest fan. But just taking that element out of it, because I try to see adaptations for what they are, not what they come from. So for a long time, I defended Game of Thrones because the people who read the books were so fucking annoying.
That didn't age well.
With early on in the show's run too. I'm not talking season 8 or 7. It's the whole your sister thing where he pushes her out of the moon door.
Yeah.
At the end of season 4. It's a different line in the book, and the entire fan community was up in fucking arms because he said a different line. And I was like, this is the most ridiculous outrage I've ever seen. So, I try not to succumb to tearing down a new creation just because it adapted from something else. And so The Long Halloween the animated version is its own thing, and it's trying to also set up a universe as indicated by the stinger at the end of the credits. So taking that into account, I will give this a recommend. I did enjoy myself watching both movies.
Okay. That was a long-winded defense of being a critic of it. I'm actually, as positive of an experience as I've had with this, I would really only recommend this if you are into the property in the first place and have a round to go. I will say, if you like the Dark Knight trilogy, this is a really interesting watch because you can see a lot of the similarities specifically with the Dark Knight. And it's really fascinating to sort of take a look at. That being said, the issues that I have really kind of all come in at the end of the second film. And I can't really recommend this to people that are just like gonna go for a casual view. I do think that it does a good job. I think it's well executed. And I do think it's actually a legitimately not... It's a legitimately good animated film. That being said, there's still a lot of assumptions that you have to go in based off of. And if you do not know the characters enough to be able to ground yourself, it's going to be kind of a weird, really first act. Mm-hmm. And if the first act doesn't set you up well, I can't guarantee that you're going to have a good time.
Gotcha.
I'm just kind of going under the assumption that anybody watching this and anybody likely inclined to watch those movies are already huge fans of the property anyways, because that's what these movies are for.
Yeah. They're for comic book fans more than the mainstream audience, really.
I would definitely say if you're...
It's not for you defense, but it's like...
There is a target audience at mine.
Audiences just aren't going to seek this out.
But again, I have to make that... I have to make that call on when I'm going to recommend it because there is a caveat there. Yeah, I can't recommend this to general audiences. Yeah. So like, I enjoyed it.
I mean, again, for those who are watching this are likely fans
probably
too.
Not. Yeah, exactly. But again, I need to I believe that's a distinction that just needs to be made regardless. Though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in actuality, if you think that this is an entry point for the DC animated universe, I don't think it is.
Okay.
Because to me, a true entry point is going to be what Marvel did with Iron Man, where you can walk in with no knowledge and be completely thrusted into a character and into a world.
Okay.
And to me, that's kind of where the bar needs to be at in order to set something as an entry point.
Okay, I can agree with that. Then watch Superman Man of Tomorrow. There you go.
Okay, well, Kenny just threw a recommendation at me, and you can all roast me for that opinion or send me other recommendations if I'm totally missing something. So thank you all for watching it. If you made it this far, please let us know what you thought of both of these films in the comments. And also, quick question for everyone. Do you think we need to do animated continuity? Do we think that's necessary, or do we like our one-offs as one-offs? Let us know. You can also find us on all podcast apps. Just look up The Return of the Movie, and please stop by our Apple podcast. And you said Apple Music. iTunes is no longer a thing, but stop by there, give us a 5-star review. It really helps us out. And if you're on the channel, that is youtube.com/Scope Productions. I see you, Kenny. I see you shaking your head. Don't you dare shake your head at me. Please stop by the channel. We got a bunch of shows coming out right now that are all either thoughtful podcast pieces or, again, total shit post comedy pieces that are phenomenal to watch. So please stop by, have a good time, and thanks for watching.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
This episode of The Return of the Movie was produced by Matt Kime, edited by Kenny Wen, with music by Benjamin Collins. The Return of the Movie is produced by ABBC Productions and released as part of the Scope Network. You can find more of our podcast and other work at youtube.com/Scope Productions.